Scott, this story has turned relations between Canada and India into a deep freeze. It's making international headlines, front page of the New York Times today as well. Your take on what's going on here?
Well, it is an explosive situation, diplomatically, geopolitically, here at home, the domestic politics of it. As we see now, there's partisan plays being executed all around. Look, my working assumption is that the Prime Minister's hand was forced. He knew that there was a potential for publication of this report. He felt, therefore, he needed to share what was going on. But he is somewhat handcuffed in what he can share publicly with respect to what the government has learned that allows them to conclude and to state publicly so baldly that they believe that the government of India sanctioned and was involved in this. And what we're talking about is killing a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil by a trading partner, an ally. And so, this is as serious gets. I do think that pressure is going to mount for the Prime Minister to share some of these facts in order to substantiate and buffer the position that the government has taken.
You worked in government for a long time, so can you possibly give us some insight as to what the thoughts might have been leading up to this bombshell by Justin Trudeau, standing up in the House of Commons on Monday and saying this?
Todd, I've thought about little else the last couple of days. I really genuinely have. If I had been the communications director of the Prime Minister in this circumstance, what might I have recommended? You know that the Globe and Mail, through sources in the intelligence apparatus of our own government, has got this story and is going to present it publicly. And I think that I would have recommended exactly what the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister's office did, which is, well, rather than respond to a media report, let's go to the House of Commons, let's brief in advance the leaders of the opposition so they can digest this news, and then let's make a public statement. The challenge, of course, is that this is such an extraordinary circumstance. It's such an explosive allegation, and India, of course, is denying it, that I think you really do have to look at what guardrails can be established, what parameters might be put around this information so that the Prime Minister can, at least in some measure, substantiate these claims because they're so extraordinary. And what you don't want is to foster more of this kind of partisan games playing. You don't want to foster suspicion, conspiracy theory. All sorts of weeds will grow in this information garden unless you tend it. It's not easy. This is very difficult. There are security and there are Five Eyes intelligence issues alive, as we heard from the Australian government representatives there. But I think that the Prime Minister eventually, now that this information is public, will be forced to somewhat defend the conclusions we have reached.
The Indian government outrage, Scott. Many analysts say the country run by Narendra Modi, a leader who they would call a nationalist and a populist. Are you surprised by the way the Indian government has been handling this over the last 2 days or so?
I'm not surprised. I want to underline for people how extraordinary that tweet you just put up, that communication, the advisory, the travel advisory from the Indian government. I mean, saying that Indians here, Indian nationals in Canada, could be subjected to hate crimes and harassment. I mean, that's one hell of a thing to say about an ally. And look, let's take the Prime Minister at his word, and I believe him absolutely irrevocably. I think that the government of Canada would prefer nothing other than to have this information be true, and I think that it has to be 100% persuaded it's accurate, given that they were forced to declare it openly. And so if you start from that premise, the behavior of the Indian government truly is reprehensible. They know this to be true. They are playing a game, and it is extraordinarily damaging. And it has the potential to spiral right out of control. Eventually, the United Kingdom and the United States and other major players will have to declare themselves. And Modi better be hopeful that we got it 100% wrong. Otherwise, this is going to turn out much worse for India than it does for Canada. You just can't go to other people's countries and kill their citizens. This is not a James Bond movie. That does not occur.
Scott Reid with his take. Good to see you as always. Thanks for your insights.
Thanks, pal.